In their world, what we just read here, like clearly they said that's what they were doing. And they were gathering these people and also taking lives along the way to finance it.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey, hey.
Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. Psh, that's the sofa. Psh, and this is Paul. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel, and if you're not new to the channel, well, my name's still Paul. Y'all, we're jumping right back into it. We've been reading Visions of Glory for, I think, like 100 years now. Right? It is what it is. My body has rejected it. We're almost through with it though. We are reading this to see what the chokehold is on people like Ruby and Jody and Lori and the whole crowd, right? Chad, everybody. So I'm just going to pick up where we left off, and then I'll make some commentary along the way so I don't forget about it and, forget to do it at the end of the video. And that's kind of that. Let's go. We left Salt Lake City late in March on a beautiful spring morning. Flowers were just beginning to bloom. It was warmer than expected and grass was green everywhere you looked. The spring had been quite rainy and the world of plants seemed to explode with flowers and greenery. We departed on I-15 headed north. We moved at a slow pace because most of our company was afoot. We were not in a hurry. Before we left that morning, we met in council and after discussion and prayer. We agreed upon our route and our distance of travel. We were not just going to Cardston. We were the Lord's camp, and we were content to go wherever the Lord sent us and for it to take as long as it took. We soon realized that the big truck and pickups could not travel at a walking pace economically. We sent them ahead and carefully calculated that their best economic speed, which they used throughout the remainder of our journey. We caught up with them each evening where camp was already being set up. I was on foot as well and often helped carry infants or whatever else people needed. We were full of hope, and as our heritage song says, we did with joy wend our way. We often left the highway to travel on side roads because the earthquake had destroyed long stretches of the freeway or opened concerns across it. Sometimes our foot traffic caught up with the trucks as they pondered how to cross some obstacle. Many of these obstacles were natural, but there were also those consisting of barricades made and defended by people as well as other caravans along the way. The first part of our journey was without worry, except that the Lord sent us around one area that had been hit by a nuclear weapon. This explosion had not occurred because of aerial strike, but by sabotage of a nuclear weapon stored underground at that place. I believe that many of the nuclear explosions across the country were a result of sabotage rather than a missile attack. A few days after we crossed into Idaho, we left all highways and went cross country. Idaho had been rocked by several atomic weapons, all at military installations, probably also due to sabotage. We were completely responsive to the voice of the Lord and were led around those areas. We learned by experience that the highways and roads were where most of our problems arose. If some armed band was accosting caravans and robbing them, it was on the highways. If there was impassable damage, it was on the highways. One big truck was perfect for cross country. It rolled across everything, including fences, leaving behind wide tracks for smaller vehicles and foot traffic. The further we went, the more we valued the big thing. We also were not on a direct course to Canada. Each morning the council met and prayerfully, that's a hard one for me to spit out there, planned each day. Some days we were given the name of a family, a person, or sometimes a ward or town to minister to. Sometimes it was just an impression to go toward a farm or town. We would determine by the Spirit how many were to go, and they would leave in the morning by taking with them whatever the Spirit directed. Sometimes we took items that the people we, please hold, met desperately needed, and we were able to trade far for more fuel and fresh meat or vegetables. Sometimes our mechanics went and traded for parts. Sometimes we would knock on a farmhouse door, and the people within had been warned by the Lord, like unto Lehi, to be prepared to leave. We would show up just as they were walking out of their home. Every imaginable thing happened as we traveled, and we learned to never fear because the Lord was ever present in our journey. Okay, now the next section is called Gifts of the Spirit. Okay, Gifts of the Spirit. Okay, so the power of the priesthood was manifest often in healings and other miracles. Not everyone had the same gifts. We found that some had great faith to heal and others to prophecy. Even children and teens had their gifts, and we embraced all that came from God. There were those among us who had an ability I had not seen before, which was the ability to speak and teach with so much power that even our enemies were pacified, and there were hearts softened towards us. This convincing gift did not flow from powerful oratory or long, mighty speaking. Their words were just softly spoken, mostly without eloquence, but what they said could not be disbelieved when their gift was manifest. We found this to be a mighty gift and reserved it to those times when the Lord sanctioned its use, usually when we were trapped and had no other way to continue our journey. My gifts grew along with most of all our company. Many of us developed the ability to read the hearts of men. We often met other caravans or small groups of people going in every direction. They would approach us with great caution because of our military truck. I was often in the group that went out to meet with these traveling bands. We found when we looked at them as we approached that we knew their intent and their needs. We also knew how to reply when they were lying to us. As we left to parley with them, we often were told by the Spirit what to bring with us to trade with them. Since we were in Idaho, quite often these were good Latter-day Saints trying to make their way to Salt Lake City or some other place. Often they were going to find their families in other parts of the country, or even trying to journey to Missouri. These we fed and shared provisions with, and sometimes we invited them to join us. Sometimes we urged them to return to their homes and build Zion where they were from. They rarely followed our counsel, and I do not know what happened to them, but most often these chance encounters were not with people we were directed together. We were sent to those we gathered. We went to their homes, into their cities, and onto their farms, and under guidance from God, we went to them. Now I want to pause right there real quick and just say this. Right now, depending on when you're watching this, but recently Lori Daybell was convicted of crimes against Charles Vallow, her husband, her former husband. Okay, so we learn in this, like her brother Adam got in the stand and whatnot about her belief system and stuff like that. So when she's sitting here talking about in her thing, and I don't know the proper names and whatnot to it, but where she's like above even like the leaders of the church or whatever, and these things where they're like, yeah, first of all, that's only supposed to be like a dude or something like that. And it might not be the leader of the church, but whatever these roles are. So hearing this of the gathering the people and whatnot, like you see the pipeline, right? And I'm not sitting here trying to like give credit to this book of like, oh, well, this got Lori into it. But you see the same narrative, the same story taking shape of gathering people, of doing this, doom and gloom, but we're saving people, yada, yada, yada. Then this whole gift thing. So remember this dilemma where Lori's sitting here, like Lori and Chad are talking about, we'll tell you what gifts you have. And they're like, oh, Zulema, girl. Okay, I saw you first time we met. I was like, that girl can whip up a tornado. That girl can whip up a tornado or hailstorm. You can't tell me nothing else. Period. End of story. You know what I'm saying? But you see where this is coming from. It's like, what I'm getting from this right here is I'm like, oh, and I don't know the proper names, but like for lack of better terms, I'm like, yeah, in this world, Lori, in her world, she was the end all. Like this was her. You couldn't tell her different. You see how that would be so insanely, and again, lack of better word, blasphemous to people, especially like April down in wherever it was, Hawaii, who was like, girl, what are you talking about? Get out of my house, right? Others, not so much. They tinkered with this belief system, whatever. So anyways, let's keep going. Okay, so the next little section is called Build Zion Where You Are. When we first entered a city, we would go to the local leaders of the church in each town. Often the leaders asked us to speak to their people, and we would spread the word. We would meet these people outside of town, build a big fire, and have a true fireside. We told them what had happened since the earthquake in Salt Lake, and how the Lord was advancing the work of the latter days. Everyone was curious about what had happened in Salt Lake City, as rumors had circulated of both awful and glorious things. We were pleased to update their view of the work of the latter days and thereby give them a correct vision of the unfolding strength of the latter-day kingdom. If the Spirit accorded, we told them who we were and what our mission was. The convincing power of God would move some of them to join us, and we welcomed them. However, much more often, we taught them to continue building Zion where they were and to prepare themselves spiritually to receive the Lord when He came. I don't want to give the impression that everyone who was worthy was being gathered into our company. This was not the case. We had been authorized by the brethren to represent the church wherever we want, and most often the Spirit led us to counsel them to stay where they were. Most of the local leaders we met already understood that they were together where they were, and to make holy the ground upon which they presently stood. Their gathering place was there or somewhere nearby. We generally found the saints to be in good spirits, with strong hopes, and often, but not always, possessing a fullness of the priesthood, just as we had obtained it. If they were lacking, we counseled and admonished them to repent and live up to their potential, almost without exception. They humbly and gratefully received our words and began their spiritual journey to Zion without fear. The people of the Lord's church did not present a scene of starving people hunkering in basements waiting without hope. Those who survived were chosen for these times before the world was created, and they arose with the great faith and willingness to do the Lord's work. They were not lost, they were home. Sometimes all we needed to do was to point this out with the convincing power of the Spirit. There were also gatherings of people not in the church who were full of the Spirit and doing the Lord's work, increasing their faith and living without fear. We were led to these at times. When we blessed and uplifted them and left them in the hands of God to continue their work. We fully expected to see them someday in Zion, but we first had to make our own way there and build it. This was the focus of our hearts and minds. While among the saints we always traded with them, we occasionally had just what they needed, and they had things we were in need of. One thing we were always bartering for was fuel, and we found people willing to trade because you can't eat fuel, and there were no roads to drive on. We found we could get used engine oil and inedible deep fryer oil for almost nothing, yet our faithful big truck could burn it all. It just gave off an interesting exhaust that smelled of french fries. We always continued our journey with sufficient for our needs. I don't recall ever exchanging money, gold, or silver. These were relatively worthless. What mattered was food and necessities. During this leg of our journey, I don't recall ever seeing a miracle to provide loaves and fishes or fuel. We had the mindset that the Lord expected us to provide for our needs and that He would lead us to obtain them. We developed complete faith in this process. We learned much later, however, that this is a lesser law and that we were really being brought to a greater faith that would allow us to rely upon Him for everything. We learned this in greater degrees as we continued our journey to Zion. We were taught it in as many ways as it took until it was perfect and powerful truth, until we simply had nothing but Him, and it was enough. Okay, next section, changes in the earth. Changes in the earth. The earth has changed dramatically. The landscape had changed. Mountains had been flattened, valleys had been heaved upon. Rivers had changed courses and created new lakes. Roads that used to lead to a city now led to a canyon or into a lake. Most roads were no longer passable, and for this reason most cars and trucks had been abandoned. Horses became the gold standard of transportation. In the devastated areas, if you had a horse, a warm shelter, and something to eat, you were wealthy. But there were also areas of the country we passed through that were pristine. There were towns and communities and out-of-the-way places that had not been devastated and where basic utilities had been restored. Sometimes we were invited into homes to shelter and sometimes into stake centers to take showers or eat. The smaller towns were succeeding more quickly at reestablishing law and order than the bigger cities. They all came to the point of guarding their borders day and night to secure their peace. We had little trouble convincing these guards to let us enter. They welcomed us and we blessed them, taught them, shared news and meals with them, and left them without fear and to the Lord's keeping. I found it interesting that many of the bridges were still intact. The roads leading up to them were often broken up, but many bridges somehow survived. We spent 40% of our time on old roads and the remainder going cross country. We found the open land easier to navigate with less human interference. Our habit was to camp far outside of a town or city and to send a small unarmed group into the city to trade or to gather people in. We proceeded with a great deal of caution, and not until we had obtained the word of the Lord to guide us. The larger cities were far more dangerous to approach or enter. Our groups always returned with what we needed. They often returned with stories of miraculous interventions where the Lord had preserved them and provided the object of their mission. Sometimes they returned with stories of marvelous healings and other blessings they had left upon the people who had been kind and receptive. When bridges were gone, we had to divert far from the bridge to some place where the slopes were gradual. There we could descend into the valley, find the river, and then trudge back up to the top. There were times when some of our vehicles became badly stuck or swamped in the rivers. Sometimes we pulled them out with a big truck. Other times we left them behind. If a vehicle broke, our mechanics fixed it with parts we had or we left it behind. We had passed many abandoned vehicles. There was little fuel and nearly half the population as before, so perfectly serviceable vehicles of every type just sat where they ran out of fuel. Upon occasion, we left one of the damaged vehicles behind and claimed better ones we found abandoned on the roads and fields. When we approached larger cities, we occasionally came upon foreign troops. We would stop and let them approach us. We had known before the start of the day's journey that we would meet them. We had a show we put on for them. We acted the part of wanderers with little or nothing among us, basically heading north with no real destination. We actually were not a threat, and we made sure this was obvious. It wasn't a difficult part to play. We appeared to be a caravan of a few strong leaders. hours, leading crying babies and tired women, contemplating teens and stumbling old men to an undetermined new home. In fact, the only small deception was that we knew very well where we were going. The rest of what they saw was the truth. The odd thing was that they never questioned where we had gotten our big truck. They even searched it occasionally, but never seemed to actually see that it was one of their own. It seemed almost invisible to them. The foreign troops would check our identity and look for military-grade weapons. They were rough and authoritative, but not hostile at this point. They didn't care where we were going as long as we were not breaking their new laws. We had a few hunting rifles, but we never hid them. The troops didn't care about such things. I should mention that we never fired those weapons at people. If we were approached by a hostile group, sometimes we would display them as a show of force, and they would leave us alone. But I do not recall ever firing them, except if some individual did so to obtain food. As time progressed, we ceased killing game for food because it no longer felt necessary. We went up through Idaho in a zigzag fashion, following the voice of the Spirit, gathering those we were shown. Our group was growing in size with more mouths to feed, but our biggest effort was in teaching those who joined us. These new people soon caught the spirit of our camp and became considerable assets to our company. Everybody had a job and everybody worked unselfishly. Even the teens and youth worked hard, sometimes after a little complaining, but we just smiled at them, prayed silently. They joined in willingly after that, good Lord. The leaves were just beginning to change color when we passed into Montana. There was a lot of damage in the cities here, more so than we had seen in Idaho. There was a lot of lawlessness and chaos. Various gangs claimed regions of the cities and defended them, not letting people in or out without their permission, usually after paying tribute. The roads in the various parts of the city were heavily guarded. There was an economy of sorts working there, and some basic utilities had been restored. These bands of gangs preyed upon the people, taking part of the food in exchange for protecting them from other gangs. We exercised due caution to avoid conflict with these bands. We were constantly on guard from those who feigned friendship or need in order to steal from us. We used the priesthood and relied upon the Lord to direct us to safety. Each night we set up watches that noted every 4 hours. When we determined by our spiritual gifts that people came peacefully, we fed them and shared our basic supplies. We rarely told them who we were ultimately going. All of these groups had their own destination and left us within a few days. We gave them what they needed, and if they had faith, we hailed them by the priesthood. If a group we encountered was LDS and the Spirit led us to, we would disclose who we were and where we were going and invite them to join us. But most often, they also went their own way. Every day we cooked large community meals and ate together. It was basic food without frills, often without meat, but we thrived because we were being changed, even though most of our company could not understand what we were being changed into. So that's all the time I have today to do that. We're getting very close, y'all. So again, I want to reiterate this with the last part that we're reading. So to me, this is how this reads. And again, I don't have any kind of religious background with the LDS or, stuff like this. So I don't know, what is, oh no, this is the standard LDS belief, and then this is extra on top of it. You see what I'm saying? Or if this has anything to do with that, right? My biggest, viewpoint into this was through the Daybell case. So reading this right here, and again, I thought that this was going to be super crazy zombie stuff, and I've not really seen any of that. What I've seen, again, is it's almost like with Lori and Chad and Melanie and them, it was in their world, what we just read here of building up this little community to travel around and do this and gather people and whatnot. To me, clearly they said that's what they were doing, right? And they were gathering these people and also taking lives along the way to finance it. I would almost bet you that Lori authentically believed that she is entitled to that. Whether she believes in this or not, I don't know. But I think her entitledness is to the level of being I deserve this money, I'm going to take their life to get it, right? Under the guise that we're trying to do this little number right here. Again, it's the doom and gloom. It's giving Oregon Trail. It's giving Dungeons and Dragon. That whole thing, right? And I think that Lori was trying to do her own little thing, and it was just well, we're going to just go on past, the LDS religion. We're going to take it up a notch. We're even above that. I feel what we've learned of Lori, and again, I don't know how the LDS church works or temple or any of that stuff, but just seeing how narcissistic she is, I'm I don't think she would ever have done well with elders and people like this kind of telling her what to do or what she could do and couldn't do and all that type of stuff. So to me, it would seem on brand of her being well, we're going to basically make our own stuff up. And guess what? I'm the king and queen of it. Okay. That part seems legitimate to me. So anyways, that is it. Let me know what you think down in the comment section. If you could drop some little sofas us off when you're down there. For myself, Rosco and Spirit, Bo and Luke, and the rest of the Sofa Squads, we gather the 144,000 Sofa Squad. And until we all gather around that sofa in the comment section, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Rosco on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.